Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Sarah and this is my channel all about kingdom marriage. It is my season of marriage and waiting to be married, waiting to be reunited, reconciled with my kingdom spouse. You're in the middle of August and I've been on, a lot of my followers have been probably not seeing any of my videos and waiting in anticipation for what I'm going to publish next, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the space, and I appreciate the quiet time that I've had with the Lord. Recently he's been having me wear a lot of gold, this golden burnt gold color, and I've been meditating on the Psalms a lot lately. It's been really beautiful in this time, specifically Psalm, I'm gonna bring it up. Thank you guys for your patience. It's just been a really beautiful time, to be really honest with you. And you know, they say that you're closest to the promise. They say that you're closest to the promise when it doesn't even look like it at all, right? And so, I want to lighten it up a little bit. It's a little hot outside. It's the middle of August and we're having some heat waves here. I've been meditating a lot on Psalm 45. The king's daughter is all glorious within. Her clothing is of wrought gold. And the Lord has been speaking to me through this color and through his glory. It is a time of we are in the days of mega glory. And so this video is called This Is It. This is it. And you know, the past couple months that I've been in this resting place with God, I really, you know, was searching with God. I mean, I search with God every single day. I meditate with God every day in the scriptures. I was like, Lord, my channel is all about kingdom marriage. I want to release a word. What should I do? What should I release? And he really held off for a long time. And he's been showing me in such a loving way, this channel is really for my testimony, because my testimony is the most encouraging thing that I can share on here, because this is it. This is it. So for those of you who are new to my channel, 3 years ago, I was put in the car in a job with my kingdom spouse, and we did not know each other, but we did work together, and we were selling life insurance, and we were selling life insurance out of town. And we had these trips planned through the job that was contracting us to do it. We were contract workers, so we were independent, but he picked me to go in his car. He had the choice between me and another girl. So that's a sign your kingdom spouse, your future husband, will pick you. He will pick you. If there's between you and another woman, he will pick you. And so he picked me to go in his car, and there was going to be some training on this trip out of town. This was the first time that he was going to be in a managerial position. He never asked to be in a managerial position. It's so funny because when we were first talking, when we started the job together, I remember him specifically saying he wasn't feeling up to taking on that responsibility to be a manager, but yet here he was, being in charge of driving me out of town, being in charge of training me, being in charge of managing me, being in charge of me, being in charge of everything in me learning, because I was literally 3.5 weeks into this new position of selling life insurance. I didn't know what I was doing. It's not even in my normal career path. I'm a creative. I own a web design agency. This had nothing to do with. And in fact, I actually was on the phone with a web design client while we were driving out of town. We were going to, we were scheduled to go stay in Walla Walla, Washington, but our visits and our scheduled visits, home visits, we did home visits, was in Hermiston, Oregon. And if you guys know that part of eastern Oregon, it can be really hot and really dry. And it was the end of July, 3 years ago, that this whole out of town trip happened. And I want to share with you guys a moment that I had with God while I was on that trip, because in this time there are going to be supernatural kingdom marriages and kingdom spouses coming together to meet each other, right? And so as this time unfolds, this time of mega glory, right? The days of mega glory that we're in, this is it. This is it. We're in it, right? Such a sensitive time. You can feel it. You can feel it in the atmosphere. And glory is the breath, essence, and atmosphere of heaven. And glory is the substance and release that emanates from the presence of God. So you can feel it. And you can feel it in those moments of when you know, this is it. This is the one. He's the one. Or you can at least hear God speaking to you. You may not, your flesh and your mind and your will and your emotions might not catch up to it in that moment. But I have a story I'm going to read from a journal entry from August 1st, 2019, of this moment that I had in his car, but I had this moment with God. And I want women, and I want men also, I want women to hear what I went through, because this was all so sudden. Me taking this job. I had been without a job for over 18 months, without any career. Like, I had my side business, but I wasn't full-time with my web design business back then. And so I didn't have a steady flow of income for over 18 months. Pretty devastating low blow of how I left my previous job because my boss wanted to marry me and was hitting on me. If those of you who follow along know my story and what I've been through. And this was the only job that called me back, the only job that offered me a position, and it was in Salem. And so the Lord put me in the car with this man of God and to be my manager. And we went inside of homes and we talked with people about the most vulnerable things that you can talk to them about. We talked to them about the end of their life. We talked to them about their debts. We talked to them about their health. And we sat down with them at their table. We knocked on their door. They welcomed us into their home. And if they were a husband or a wife and they were married, we were not allowed to go into that home unless the husband and wife were present together to meet with us together at the same time. So it was very much a setup from the Lord from the get-go that I took this job, that I had no business even being in this job. So you can imagine every time you get a new job, right, you get anxiety. You get all these thoughts, you get all these, like, don't mess it up, like, do perform well, you gotta learn everything quickly. Like, what is your, before you start actually feeling like, how long does it take for you to actually acclimate into the job before you start actually looking like you know what you're doing, right? And I was in the thick of it, y'all. I was, and I was fast. The Lord fast-tracked me. Because I think when I applied to the job, it was the very beginning of July. 3 days later, I got a phone call. 4 days later, I got an interview. 5 days later, I got a job offer. 6 days later, I got my study materials. About 10 days into the job, I tested for my certification from the state to be licensed in the state of Oregon to sell life insurance. Y'all, I barely passed that test. Don't ask. The Lord is the only reason I passed that test. So, because I knew nothing about any of this stuff. So fast forward, he picks me, picks me up from my house. We drive all the way up to Hermiston. We have all of our appointments. We're going from house to house. I really didn't know like what to expect, but I did have a word from the Lord a couple days prior to this happening. Actually, that same week, the Lord told me that this is it. It's happening. It's right now. He's right in front of you. Because I was in tears over my ex-boss and I was just going through my emotions. But I didn't suspect anything. I really didn't. I just thought that this person was going to train me. He was just somebody I worked with. I wasn't suspecting anything. I wasn't looking for it either, ladies. I was expectant, but I wasn't pressuring it, if you know what I mean. I was open, but I wasn't like for certain, because I was letting the Holy Spirit lead me. And honestly, this job was really all new. Everything was all new and suddenly and all at once, and it was happening. And I'm not somebody who normally just travels out of town to go work a job I don't even know what I'm doing in. So he was very kind and he was very protective. So let's go to this story. So one of the houses that we pulled up at, it was this really cool log cabin home, very masculine design. It looked, and if you know the area of Oregon that I'm talking about in Hermiston, it's very close to Pendleton, Oregon. And Pendleton is kind of like a historic family name, native tribal name. There's a lot of beautiful woolen Pendleton products under the brand Pendleton, if you go look that up. And it's very much cowboys and Indians. So this town that we were in is cowboys and Indians. It's a farmer town. They're known for their watermelon crops. I don't know why I'm sharing all this. It's country. It's Oregon, Eastern Oregon country. And so this man had this log cabin house. He had a free range cow in his front yard, a beautiful tree in his front yard. You could tell it was a nicer home of the homes that we had visited before, of the homes that we had been inside before. And it was a farm, so there were some barns and some farmland. And so we pull in and he parks the car, but he parks the car with the back towards the front of the house. And he was so kind and so protective of being, my trainer, that he said, wait here in the car. I'm going to go check things out and then I'll be back to get you. So I'm sitting in the car. I sat there. I probably sat there for a good 10, maybe 12 minutes. It was a long time I was sitting there, but the whole time my mind and my will and my emotions, my mind and my flesh and the accuser were telling me and bossing me around. Get your studies out, get your papers out. You need to study. You're not on a break. You need to study, for your new job. You need to be working right now. And I felt so strongly, because you guys know how, self-disciplined I am. You can tell the type of person I am. And I was sort of thinking in my mind, I really don't know what's going to happen when he goes up to knock on the door of this house. I don't know if they're home. I don't know if we're going to even get to go inside. I don't know what he's doing, but I'm trusting, and I'm just sitting there. And I meant to get my paperwork, because my paperwork was down by my feet in the car, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get it out, and I'm really gonna study it, and I'm gonna do some work right now. I kept looking over my shoulder to the door to see if I could see him. He had gone inside. I didn't know where he was. I checked a few times. I was like, how long am I gonna sit here? I could not get past the glory and the weight of God's glory that was on me in that moment, to the point that I could not even lift my arms to grab my work, to work and do my studies and prepare for my role and my position. And when you get that feeling, I don't know if you guys can imagine what I'm talking about. it was such a strong feeling of anticipation of, this is it. This is your moment. This is it. That's all I felt. And the windows were cracked because it was hot. And so there was this beautiful, and we were he parked it in the shade, but he parked it so I could face the barns and the farm fields. So it was so beautiful. It was like serene. It was such a beautiful God moment. And it made the strongest impression on me. And all I could feel was protection and peace. And I had this feeling in the back of my head that said, this is it. This is it. This is it. And I didn't know what to make of it, you guys, because my flesh and my will and my emotions were fighting it. I was like, this is what? Like, God, what are you trying to tell me? This is it. Like, this is my job. This is it. Like, this is my break time. Like, what do you want me to do? What do you, like, you want me to sit here? This is it. Enjoy the moment. And that's what I felt. I felt like I just needed to enjoy the moment. And y'all, something is happening. I don't see that. I know the shift has happened. I know there's been many shifts, and I've prayed off so many situations between me and my kingdom spouse that have kept us at a distance from each other. For those of you that don't know, he currently lives in California, and I'm in Oregon. So we are long distance, and we have not been in each other's presence now for over 2 years. And he moved there in November of 2019. So very, very quickly after we met through this job, he was ushered to move out of his parents' house and move away. And so in this time, God has just been preparing us and healing us and healing us and getting us ready for holy matrimony. And for that moment when he gets down on one knee and he proposes to me. And you guys, this is it. Middle of August. This is it. This is it. And I'm supposed to record this. I'm supposed to tell you guys this story. So there's 2 other really cool things that happened with this man in his house, but I'm going to read you guys this journal entry that I wrote down on August 1st, 2019. I said, "Dear God, there was a beautiful moment on our road trip where we stopped at a man's house, and his countryside estate was just beautiful. And John, my man, John parked the car afar off from the house, facing north, and the house was behind me. So it was so funny the way he parked the car. I thought that was so funny. And with the windows down, I sat there and waited in the car. I wasn't sure what I should do because I was just sitting there, waiting. But oh God, how time stood still and heaven surrounded and heaven surrounded me in that moment. This is it. I don't see it happening in the natural. It's been hard. I've been weary, you guys. Like, waiting on your kingdom marriage, waiting on the promise from God is hard because you have to put that promise on the altar every day and go on, you know? But you also pray down heaven, right? And God reminded me of this moment. He was like, Sarah, you need to share this. You need to get on your video and you need to talk about it. Because so many women are going to come into this moment where this is it. And they're going to relate. And they need to hear you talk about it. How time stood still and heaven surrounded me in that moment. And you spoke over me. This is it. That's what I kept hearing. This is it. It's like, I don't know what you're saying. I was being hard on myself. because I've had so many devastating moments in my life. But I've had to let go of the devastation. I've let that go. And God has life for me now. He's going to give me this beautiful marriage. I'm going to have beautiful children growing in my womb. I'm going to have life inside of me. I'm going to make life, produce life from this marriage. It's phenomenal. It's amazing. So I'm letting go of the devastation and the things that devastated me in my relationships and my broken relationships in my life and the abusive relationships in my life that devastated me. They devastated me. But this was different. And heaven surrounded me in that moment, and you spoke over me. You made a way for my comfort. You told me everything would be taken care of. I'm in awe of you, Lord. And then I wrote it down. I said, I truly don't know what this all means. But this is it. This is it. You know, right about the time that he left for California, I had a heyday with the Lord about it. I was really, really frustrated with God. And God reminded me of two different things at two different times. He reminded me close to November-ish time frame. I was meditating in my journals with God, and he reminded me of this moment when we were with this gentleman in his log cabin, his estate home, because we did end up going inside. And John was so kind. He prepped him beforehand, and he said, "Can she do her presentation? She's learning." So he was so patient with me. He just listened. He was this older man. And you know, you got to talk about all kinds of things when you sit with these people. And the Lord kept saying, don't bring up the wife. She passed away. And I didn't. And later, when we were about to leave the house, it was a lovely time. I love talking to people who are seniors who have such wisdom. I could have spent all day there. John was looking at me and he was like, "You're going to keep talking to him, aren't you?" And I was like, "I love it here. He's touring his home with us. He's just being nice. He's so welcoming." And we were about to leave, and he pulled out this funny little business card that he had about tree trimming, and there were, as a joke, 2 cherries and a silhouette of a woman, and they were mimicking her breasts. It was a joke. It was a very harmless little business card joke. When you opened it up, they became cherries hanging on a cherry tree. And he said, we used to have an orchard of cherry trees in our farm, and they just grew out. Eventually, fruit trees and orchards will, I don't know the terminology for it, but they'll grow out and they rot. So you have to cut them down. So he said when it came time to cut down all the cherry trees, the dead cherry trees, my wife begged me and she said, "Please leave 2 of them. Just leave 2 of them." And the symbolism behind the cherry trees is that I grew up on these 4 acres of land where it used to be 288 acres of orchards. And one of the biggest things that West Salem was known for were their cherry tree orchards, and you could see them because we're on a hillside across from the river. So when you were on the other side of the river and you look over in the hills of West Salem, you would just see pink, puffy hills because all the cherry blossoms would be in bloom. And so when we bought the property, they still had 3 cherry trees, real cherry trees from that orchard on our property. Now they're dead, but I still remember that, and it's a part of my life. It's very much a part of who I am. And climbing those cherry trees and eating cherries when I was a little kid, we did that all the time. And when I got my vision of being proposed to. When I did my healing and my timeline therapy in the beginning of 2019, I had a vision of being proposed to, and all I saw in the vision were cherry trees and cherry blossoms, that pink color. And for those of you who follow my Instagram channel, Style Websites, that channel, that color, that brand was birthed out of the color pink from the cherry blossom vision of me being proposed to. That pink color that I saw, that was so vivid in my vision. Now, do I think I'm going to be proposed to in front of cherry trees? No, but this whole story symbolizes that. And the Lord reminded me, he was like, do you remember the way he parked the car? And I said, yes. And he said he faced you with the 2 cherry trees in front of you. You could see them right behind the fence line. You just didn't notice them because they weren't in bloom. It was the summer. And I just sat there and my jaw dropped when the Lord told me this, because I was so confused about why he parked the car the way he did. And the moment that I was sitting in that car, not only did I feel God, but I felt the presence of a feminine energy, like an angelic, feminine, holy presence. And I was like, my God, it was the wife. It was the late wife. And I'm not speaking any demonicness over it, but you know, when loved ones leave energy behind because they loved each other so much. And we know that 2 symbolizes a couple. And she begged him, please leave 2 cherry trees up. Just don't cut 2 of them down. And so the Lord reminded me of that, and he reminded me of all of my vision of the cherry trees and the cherry blossoms, and how that's all over my branding, and how that was what sparked my journey to being ready to meet my kingdom spouse. Truly, that was the beginning of it. So there was that, and then there was also a moment that I was so in doubt. This house and this moment were so symbolic for me on our trip out of town. So there was another moment, I want to say this was a little bit later on. This was more probably close to end of December, January. And I was really doubting in my mind. I had started fasting for whether, God wanted him to be in my life. I mean, he moved him away. I was like, Lord, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. I need evidence. And the Lord, so we had, when we would do our plan, like our days, our trips out of town, or our trips during the work week, and we would go from house to house, and we'd book our appointments, and we had to write down all the addresses in the neighborhoods that we were going to, and it helped if we could write them all down with their names and their phone numbers, so that by the end of the day, we were like, okay, these are how many people we talked to, these are how many appointments we booked, these are the people that canceled, yada, yada, yada. And also just helped with like directions, like go here first, because then it was like closest house to closest house when we were driving around. And I just ended up taking his notebook and being the scribe, because I'm a scribe, I love to write. And he let me, so he would drive and then I would just help him navigate. And I would write every single name down, and I actually kept that notebook after I quit working for the life insurance job. I kept the notebook, and it had his name on it. It had John's name on it. And I just kept it. It was cute, it was nostalgic, but I also I just didn't throw it out yet. It'd only been a couple months. I actually still have that notebook. It's super cute. And so the Lord told me a couple months later, like winter time, late winter, he was like, go find the notebook and go look up the name of the man of that house that you went to, because I didn't remember his name. And go look up his name. And I was like, Lord, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you leading me down this rabbit hole? What am I supposed to look up the name for? So he kept saying it. He was super loud about it. So I was like, okay, all right, fine. So I dug up the notebook and I was like, hey, I have the notebook. Okay, cool. And then I was like, okay, I wonder if I wrote down that guy's name. I wonder if I can even find like the date that we were doing it. And of course, I'm a scribe, so I write the dates down in the corner every time without fail. So I look it up and I go down and I'm looking through the names. And I'm like, will I even recognize which one is his? And sure enough, I look at it and I'm like, it's Ivan. His name is Ivan. Okay, what does that mean, Lord? And he said, now I want you to go online and I want you to look up the meaning of the name Ivan. I actually told this to my kingdom spouse. I told him this story. And I was super uncertain of this whole journey. And I don't know if you guys went on to you should go to my community channel, my community section of my page, because I have this beautiful podcast listed on my channel on a post that I put on my community, all about this woman and her journey to kingdom marriage and all of these little treasure hunt things that the Lord did to keep her going, that she saw the Lord's hand in every single detail of him, God leading her to her husband, her man of God. And it is the most phenomenal podcast on kingdom marriage. My goodness, it's beautiful, the amount of detail that she goes into. And when I listen to it, this specific story that I'm telling you, this specific testimony that I'm telling you about how God told me to go get the notebook, that we wrote down all the addresses and the names of all these people that we drove around to, and go look up the name, and then go to Google and look up the name. When I Googled the name, Ivan means John in, I think it's like Scandinavian. My jaw dropped. I was like, Lord, seriously. Okay. Like, what can you do in those moments, right? So I want to encourage you ladies, look for God in every single detail. Seek the Lord in every single moment of prayer for your marriage. Don't make it an idol. Lay it down at the altar if you need to, and do that regularly, because worship is about being with the Father. And I don't mean lay it down at the altar and forget about it. I mean lay it down at the altar and be at the altar. Be with God in those moments of weariness, and in those moments where you only have groanings in your heart for prayers. Because this is it. It's just over that next little hill. Your kingdom marriage is coming, and it's coming soon, and it's coming swiftly. This is it. I love you guys. Be blessed. Bye.